Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast, where road life meets real life.
Hey, everybody. We're here at Learn to RV. Today, we're going to dive into something a little bit different. We're going to talk about healthcare coverage on the road. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what our healthcare coverage looks like and kind of what you could expect in the marketplace with marketplace season opening real soon. So, we're going to bring in some pretty special guests on this episode. And so, we're going to talk about healthcare on the road, what every RVer needs to know, whether you're full-time, part-time sometimes, or, maybe you're just seasonally out there and you're just shopping for new healthcare coverage. This could be a great series for you to watch. So obviously we're going to have Tasha here and Jennifer Agio. And a little bit later, we're going to bring on a couple guests. So how are you girls today?
Good.
The sun is shining.
Yeah.
It's
So,
cold.
I mean, as far as it's cold here too. And we woke up to cold. So, I mean, I'm going to start with me. So I'm going to talk about my setup to start with. So our dynamic's very different. Frank spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. And so we have what's called TRICARE. And after interviewing Dealora, I learned something about it. It's like one step below, Medicare, which I think I knew because everybody refers to it as DICARE, not TRICARE. We do have a supplemental plan on it with Blue Cross, and we do have dental, and we have, vision on ours for some network flexibility. But recently, I went to the hospital, and based on what Dealora and I talked about in the interview that you're going to see a little bit later, I realized one thing. And that's that a couple weeks ago, I ended up going to the hospital, which I don't do often, in Hershey, Pennsylvania, because I was suffering from vertigo. Never had vertigo in my life. Brand new problem in my world. And I haven't had it since. But they did all of the things she said they'd do, all the necessary testing. So like I got the CAT scan, I got the EKG, I got all the things that were concerns. And then they handed me a bottle of pills and sent me home. And so I thought, oh, that's no big deal back then. And now looking back at it after my conversation with Dealora, I thought, you know what? They did everything they needed to do to get me out of there and rule out any major problems, but they didn't dive into anything else. They just handed me pills and let me go. So it kind of made me wake up today in that conversation. So, talking about our different, and, only share as much as you're willing to share. Obviously, this is personal information about our healthcare coverage and stuff like that. So, and we're going to be mindful of that, especially today. But as, RVers, it's going to be helpful for other RVers to know kind of what we do. And we are all very diverse in terms of what we do and don't have. And so that's going to be a great conversation today. So, Tasha, I'm going to pick on you first, if that's okay.
Yay.
I'm guessing because you work a full-time job, you have more of a traditional insurance plan.
We do, but it's a little wonky. So, Matt and I both, I've talked about this. We both work traditional 9-to-5 jobs. We that both offer insurance. So we have our employer offered insurance plans. He has his through his employer and I have mine through mine. And then the kids are on my insurance. Where that gets a little sticky is that I work for a healthcare system. So they really want you to use their healthcare system. So if you're not in the 26 counties that they serve, you're kind of out of luck. And so we don't spend a lot of time in those 26 counties. So what they have is they have their own healthcare insurance that they have created. And then they partner with a second insurance company to offer insurance to individuals like myself who are located out of state. And that insurance comes at a higher premium. It comes with higher copays. And it's a little bit harder to find doctors that are in network wherever we're at. The other thing that's a little bit tricky is that we started in Arkansas. So we started with doctors in Arkansas, and every state has different healthcare laws. So I'm in a situation currently where my prescriptions are running out with my Arkansas doctor. And so because we domicile in Florida, I now have to find a Florida doctor for when we get to Florida this winter and figure out how to find a doctor on this insurance that is in network that has availability, is accepting new patients, that will get me in to do a new patient consultation and hopefully give me prescriptions for my medications that I take every day. And hopefully my prescriptions that I have right now will not run out by the time I get to Florida. So there are good things about having that traditional insurance. And then there are bad things because I work remotely and I travel. And so my insurance wants me to be in one spot and I pay a lot of money to not be in that one spot. So that hurts. We had a situation where I had to go to the hospital in California last year, and I feel like I will be paying for that hospital bill as long as I'm paying for my school loans. So, I mean, it's like, it's
They
health
nickel and
insurance
dime
is
you for everything.
yeah, it's no joke. It's a hard knock life, as they say.
So, I mean, that brings us, with traditional medicine, you do have, prescriptions and challenges like that. So, one of the things that, we
Yeah.
personally do is we do a lot of homeopathic items from home. And I started doing that long before I hit the road. It was just, somebody told me, oh, you have an ear infection? Go get an onion and this will cure your ear infection. And I was like, shut up, really? But, the more I did it, the more I learned that there are natural remedies for a lot of things that we do. And so the supplements and stuff that you can get in homeopathy are oftentimes an option. But I know, Jen, you use a lot of homeopathic options on the road. Is that true?
Well, we use a lot of the essential oils and stuff. I haven't really dived into the homeopathy side of it as much, what the traditional homeopathy is, but we do use essential oils, which is same thing. There's a lot of natural things that you can do with that, to heal different things. I also use liquid silver, which I know is a hot topic out in the world, but
We do
if
too.
someone starts to get an ear infection, a drop or two of liquid silver in the ear clears it right up, or sore throats, spray some down in the back of your throat. I mean, we've done a lot of things like that just to keep us healthy. I mean, that's part of our health insurance is just living a healthy lifestyle and doing some of those healthy things to keep us out of the most basic things. Obviously, it can't stop us from an accident or breaking a leg or other things like that, but it can keep us generally healthy for the most part. So
So, do you have regular insurance that you guys carry?
no. Well, so we do what's called health share, and a lot of it's not a new word out there for RVers because I think it is a common thing that a lot of RVers do consider. We went down the health share route because for us, health insurance was out of our budget. There's just we have gotten quotes multiple times from multiple people, and it is just so expensive for a family of six. Like I can't even fathom paying that cost on a monthly basis. um and we'd have to get a third or fourth job to cover health insurance for our family. But for us, because we do try to maintain that healthy lifestyle, I mean, we don't put a big emphasis on primary care visits. We don't put a big emphasis on regular checkups or things like that. If someone starts feeling ill, we take care of it ourselves for the most part. We've had to go to the hospital a couple of times over our years on the road. So we've been on the road 8 years, and we've had like maybe four visits. Like I can count it on one hand. Mostly my husband by doing silly things like banging his head, cracking his head open, or, you know, the other couple months ago, he sliced his finger really good. We ended up in the ER because urgent care was closed. And he needed stitches. It was the first time he's ever needed stitches. Like normally we've learned over the years when he cracks his skull open that actually if we're just patient, it does heal itself, because we went in the very first time he bumped his head on something and they're like, oh no, we don't do stitches for that anymore. You just, give it time, whatever, it heals. And so we've learned things like that over the years too. But this last time he absolutely needed stitches. So, that was a hefty medical bill, unfortunately. It was $2,000. I won't beat around the bush. $2,000 to sit in an ER room for 20 minutes while we waited on the doctor to do stitches. It seemed a little high to us, but we deal with it. Most of the time when we are faced with a bill, so our health share, we have a high deductible, $5,000, I think, on our health share. And so most of the time we're paying out of pocket. So the $2,000 is obviously out of pocket. But what we usually do is we approach the hospital. Most places we go have a, what's the word I'm looking
Self-pay
for?
discount.
Self-pay discount, that's one of them, but they also a lot of hospitals write things off, so
Mm-hmm.
we can a lot of times get discounted rates or things like that. For example, going back before we hit the road, the town that we lived in, the hospital wrote off all. I had 4 cesarean sections, and those are not cheap, and we were low income family, and our hospital wrote off all of those bills, and we didn't pay a dime for a single C-section.
Wow.
And so we've learned how to navigate the healthcare system because our budget keeps us, I mean, our income is so low that we do qualify for a lot of those programs. Unfortunately, this last hospital, wanted us to jump through so many hoops. They made it virtually impossible to, um, you know, qualify for it. So in the end, we just ended up setting a monthly payment plan for it, which also works. So you're not dishing out $2,000 at once. You're just paying it over the course of a few months, like a $100 payment, $150 payment a month, more manageable. So, it works for us. It's not for everybody, but, us maintaining healthy. And the other great thing with our health share is they just recently added free virtual primary care visits.
Well,
So
that's
now
nice.
health shares are starting. Yeah, they're starting to offer more things. So we can do primary care visits,
Yeah.
or if we, have a spot we want to have looked at, we can hop online for free with a doctor, have them, send pictures, video, whatever, look at it. These days, things have elevated so much. Telemedicine has always been free through our health share. So as little things came up over the years, we'd hop on telemedicine. They'd write us a script. 90% of the time, we don't follow through with the script. We just needed that doctor's opinion to make sure we were on the right track,
Right.
and that's kind of how we've used it. And then we do our own natural stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, no, and I mean, cost is a big factor. When we go back home to Texas, Frank has to set up appointments months in advance, sometimes 8 months in advance. So, like to get his glasses, for the rest of us, we can all go to a regular eye doctor. It takes 6 months to get an eye appointment at the VA. And so there's a whole nother
Wow.
layer for us when we go to Texas where we have to be there X number of days. We have to be there through his whole appointment schedule. And so all of those things are factors when we're dealing with that. And, the VA, it's a nightmare to switch from VA clinic to VA clinic. He can go anywhere in the country to get seen in an ER, but he doesn't because he's Frank. Um, but I mean, he's suffered broken fingers. He actually, we were in Palm Springs. I finally convinced him to go to the ER. He slammed his finger in the truck door as he shut it, and like he's just standing there going, "Ow!" And I'm like, "What? Oh my gosh!" And so as I turn the corner, I open the door, and his fingers, and it's not in pieces, thankfully, but it's definitely black, and It took 2 days to talk him to go to the ER, and they're like, "Well, we can re-break it, but it's said, it's already on, it's starting to mend." And so, like, he did 3 roofs with a broken ankle after he broke it in North Carolina a couple years ago. He got to Texas to the VA clinic. He had made the appointment in North Carolina, but he drove all the way to Texas on this broken ankle after 3 installs. So, I mean, it's not like he's not stubborn, but we do have to be in the right place for his VA appointments for sure. And travel patterns impact that. So I mean, like, we will start seeing eye doctors
Sure.
and stuff when we get to Florida this year. Um, but we are fortunate we can do that. Like dentists and doctors, we can do just about anywhere in the country with our supplemental insurance. So, all right. So this is the part where we're going to cut away for just a few minutes and go talk to Dealora. And she's going to talk about PPO plans and all the plans and subsidized plans. And so just hang tight. Dealora is a wealth of information. I am here with our resident expert. Dealora actually writes a ton of medical and travel related blog posts for Learn to RV. And so she is what I call our resident expert, but she actually specializes in healthcare. And a lot of times that's for RVers. So, Dealora, you've been helping hundreds of people find coverage that fits their lifestyle for a bunch of years now. So, what do you think the biggest misconceptions are in the industry as a whole and then geared toward RVers?
Gosh, yeah, there's so many. Number one, any insurance will do. That's totally not the case. Insurance is not one size fits all. There's different insurance for different needs. Um, so that's one, and I'll just leave that there. I could go on forever about that. Secondly, going without insurance is a better option. That's a total, oh gosh, that scares the life out of me when people tell me that they're just a cash payer or they're just going to roll the dice and go with that. Insurance is not for doctor's visits. We can probably all afford to go to the doctor if we're not feeling good. Or, we can all even afford to pay for a broken arm, probably. My son broke his arm a couple years ago and it wasn't that expensive, a few $1,000s, and he was good. Um, but what if something bigger happens? You fall on a hike and you broke your back and now you need several surgeries
Yeah.
or cancer diagnosis or something. You have insurance for those really big things. And in those cases, being a cash payer is life or death. So that's probably the biggest misconception that is what I'm most passionate about.
And that makes sense. So, do you think that those same misconceptions happen for even seasoned RVers?
Yeah, that absolutely. I think the traveling community is one of the biggest, traveling communities and maybe small business owners. Those usually are the people that are most hit hard by insurance. A lot of travelers were corporate employees and they decided to quit their job to go on the road, and so they had insurance, paid for them or whatever, and now they're having to pay for it on their own, and that's a big sticker shock when you're in that situation. And so our RVers are very commonly, they're like, "Well, it's just gonna be a year or 2. We'll be okay." And that's a so risky. That's such a risky decision. So basically there's like 5 different types of insurance just as a whole in America. The first one is corporate coverage. We all know and love corporate coverage. If you have corporate coverage and you're able to keep it while traveling, great option. Just make sure it travels nationwide. Not all do. Most do, but not all. So make sure that that is, a benefit to you. Number 2 is the VA, and I can put Medicare with that coverage. Those are both things that I don't deal with, and both of those, if you're on Medicare, you're solid. If you're on the VA, you're pretty solid. There are some different, VA plans, I think. Um, so maybe a little different story, but most of the time, VA is good. Um, Next option, and if you're coming off a corporate plan and buying your own insurance, you have a few options. Number 1 would be a private long-term plan. That's what I mostly recommend for RVers. It's gonna give you a nationwide PPO. I myself have used it in several states all across the country. It comes with a ton of benefits that are very similar to what you got in your corporate coverage. So it's the most similarly aligned. And so you can make a lateral move. In addition to that, if you're not a subsidized family, that means that the government's not helping you pay for your health insurance and you're completely out of pocket, then the private long-term plans are more affordable for you, about 40 to 60% less. Then your next option would be the ACA. Um, for traveling companies, the ACA is not always a great option. Very few states have plans that you can travel nationwide. And if you're not subsidized, they are pretty expensive. These two, the private long term plan and the ACA, are going to be the most solid, safest options for you. Um, then you have short term and health share plans. Both of those I kind of put in the same category. They're incredibly risky. And the reason why they're so enticing to people is because they have a lower monthly cost usually, but that's because of how risky they are. I never, ever put any of my clients that I talk with on a short term or health share plan ever, even though I do have access to those. Those are never a route that I would put any of my family members on or any of my clients. Both plans don't have the same type of contract, if you will, where the health insurance is made to pay your
Mm.
claims. They absolutely can deny claims. It happens all of the time, and most of the time it's when you absolutely need it the most. And so it's just not as guaranteed, it's not as stable, it's not as safe, and that's why they are cheap. Um, so those are basically your main type.
Um,
Yeah,
all right. So,
yeah.
at the very beginning, you talked about something that a lot of RVers don't expect, like a life-altering illness while they're traveling on the road, or a serious diagnosis, or a medical event of some kind. We're FRVA members, so Family RV Association has, an emergency plan to get you home and that sort of thing. How do you feel about things like that, like SkyMed and Masa? Are those good things for people to invest in, or can that be covered under regular health insurance if it's the right one?
It depends on what exactly you're looking for. Like I said, insurance is not one size fits all. If you have the right insurance plan and you can just get care wherever you are, then maybe you don't have to go fly anywhere and get, medevaced. Um, if you have the right health insurance, maybe that comes with it, or maybe adding the supplemental plan that I talked about is a good option. Another benefit in that plan is travel assist. So if you're more than 100 miles away from home and something happens and you wind up hospitalized, the travel assist will medically transport you back home and take care of you. Um, Depending on the state that you're in, this is not an option available to every state, so it just
Oh,
depends on
interesting.
where you're at. But that is definitely a viable option.
Let's
Yeah.
talk domicile because you and I, that's part of our world just because we're full time RVers. But a lot of the people that listen to our podcast are just seasonal RVers. How does your state of domicile affect your insurance options? And what should RVers know before choosing one if they have to choose one?
Um, wow, there's so much information in that question. Um, y- health insurance is health insurance is state regulated. So not every state is equal. So yeah, some states, like my home state is North Carolina, and the ACA actually does offer PPO plans in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the few states. You still have to be a little bit careful. There's still not, just because you have a PPO doesn't mean, okay, I'm golden. You still have to read the plan. It is a little bit different. So, make sure you do that. But not every state offers ACA coverage with PPO networks. So if you're somebody that has critical diagnosis that you have to be seen every couple of months or you have to get, certain types of medication and you do not qualify for long-term private coverage, then you want to make sure that you're domiciled in a state where a PPO plan through the marketplace is offered. And I can help you with that, looking through that information and making sure you're set up. And then on the flip side, if you are a healthy person and you want to have private long-term coverage, um, there are 31 states that can be written in. Um, so if you're not in one of those states, then that, you know, might lead you to just the ACA.
I know you said we were talking the other day and you said open enrollment starting soon. Why is that such an important window for RVers to understand?
Well, open enrollment starts November 1st and goes until January 15th. And this is the only time of year that you can sign up for a marketplace plan without having a qualifying event. So that just means that anybody who wants to get on the marketplace for whatever reason can do so during this 60, 75-day window. If you miss that window and you decide in March that you want to get on the ACA, the only way you can get on it at that point is if you have a qualifying life event. That's like a marriage, a divorce, a move to a different state, new baby, adoption.
Oh,
That's basically
interesting.
it. Yeah. So if you miss that, then you can't get on the ACA. You can still get on a private plan if you're approved. Those are medically underwritten, so you take a chance by waiting. Don't wait. Even if private plan is where you want to go and you know that and you're like, "Oh, I'll just get on that later." We need to have a conversation during open enrollment to make sure that you can get approved, because if you cannot, then I'm going to tell you, now's the time you need to get on the marketplace.
If you had to say one piece of advice that you wish every RV couple knew or family they knew before choosing a health plan, what would you say you'd want to tell them?
I mean, I can't reiterate enough that make sure you get a plan that is truly a long-term plan, and that doesn't mean you have to stay on it forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
You can actually cancel them anytime you want to. But long-term means that the insurance company cannot cancel you no matter what happens to you. Um, so getting on one of those plans, number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for taking the time today, Dealora. Can you do me one more favor and just drop your website again? Just where can they reach you if they need to find you?
Sure, my website is insurancewithdelora.com, all spelled out, all one word. My name is spelled Dealora, and you can find me anytime there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we're back and Dealora is finished up with us. She has so much information. Like I said, if you have questions, comments, please drop them in the information below or reach out directly to her. But I'm sure that your questions are questions someone else is thinking about. And so you can easily schedule a one-on-one consultation with no, requirement to buy insurance through Dealora. She's just going to help you navigate that. And, as a, so we're always sponsored by RV Roofing Solutions. The thing is, I know that when I make an estimate for somebody in RV Roofing Solutions, sometimes I don't sell that roof for 2 or 3 years. And so Dealora plays the long game just like that. So if it's not right for you to step on board with, her right now to help you navigate that, she's going to be there a long time just being able to do that for you. So there's a lot of stuff beyond the basics, so we're going to jump a little bit into homeopathy and kind of what that looks like for our family. But I want to ask both of you, Jenn said you don't do a lot of homeopathy. I have a lot of the little blue pills that are basically sugar pills with the homeopathic medication on the outside of them. What's important is not to touch them. And so there's like a little screw cap, you turn it and you take it. But what's great about homeopathy is you can't overdose on it. And so for us, just having an arsenal of things that for pain or for just simple management, we don't like taking things like Tylenol or stuff like that, stuff that's going to have long-term effects. So we like to go the other direction. So we have rub-on arnica. We have quite a few things like that we keep on hand. Sometimes we do keep tablets for CBD, just CBD oil for anxiety issues. Doesn't always work, but we do have them on hand. But are there any things that you guys do that is outside the box, so to speak, of that in your healthcare system?
We really like and I know that Jen touched on this a little bit earlier, but we really like our essential oils, and we have like a um little, what am I trying to say? Like, not a dehumidifier, but like a little
Diffuser.
diffuser. Thank you. Um, and so whenever we start to feel like under the weather or stuffy or whatever, we have certain blends that we bought that are specific for trying to help clear that out. And so the little diffuser kind of moves to whoever, like right beside the bed of whoever is starting to get stuffy. The other thing is, a long time ago, someone introduced us to something called Fisherman's Friend, which is like this little throat lozenge thing that you can get at the store, and they taste horrible. They are the worst, and you have to like suck on them. You can't just like chew them or swallow them. You have to suck on them. They are the worst. But man, those suckers will just knock that out right away. So if we're starting to feel like our throats are going south, we'll get that and it'll knock it out. David this week was starting to complain that his throat was hurting, and he is so my child. He gets like strep throat and sinusitis and all of that kind of, ear, nose, throat stuff, like every change in season. I have always been like that. I'm so susceptible to that. And he is the exact same way. And so this last week, I was like, I'm going to introduce you to my friend of the fisherman. And he was like, what the heck are you giving me? But um, it works. I don't know.
Can he
Um,
still have honey?
we do that. And then yes, he can have honey as long as it's like, all natural honey.
So we
So
we
we do
keep
a
a
lot of
small
hot teas.
yeah, we keep a small jar of Manuka honey in the medicine cabinet outside the
So
scope
do we.
of, and so Manuka
Mhm.
honey has so many great healing properties that if you can suck on it kind of like peanut butter, it'll work a lot better than if you just swallow it. But let it kind of just sit in your mouth until it dissolves and goes down your throat, and it'll coat your throat in such a way that,
Yep.
and the healing properties in Manuka honey far outweigh like standardized honey. Um, but yeah,
Yep. Have you ever put Manuka honey on a cut too?
yes.
Yeah.
On a cut?
Yeah, so
Yep.
we were actually introduced to it by a doctor. So our first year on the road, our 21-year-old was bit by a dog, and he lost a piece of his nose. And so the doctor that we went to said, "It'll grow back. I won't do surgery." And so we were in it for the long haul. We would have stayed if they'd paid for a surgery, but our insurance said, "Nope, nope." And the doctor's like, "No, it'll grow back. It'll be okay." And so Hezekiah has almost no scarring today from that, and it's been a long time because he's 21 and he was 8 when it happened. It was our first year on the road. But that was what he gave my son was Manuka honey, and every day he would apply it like right here to the inside of his nose. And to this day, Hezekiah absolutely abhors honey. He won't eat it. He won't. But at the same time, I do think it was a big
Really?
reason why it healed so well. And we had a doctor, like a bona fide
Yeah.
like doctor that gave us Manuka honey. That's when we were introduced to it.
That
Mhm.
actually give you that.
Yep.
I love it. I love it when you run into a bona fide doctor that will give you those natural, ways of dealing with things.
Well, and I think there's
Okay,
still a
you
place for.
mentioned peanut butter. Sorry, you mentioned peanut butter, and this is not like the most helpful thing, but it is for me because I get them all the time. And my friend Laura told me about this. So I'm passing this on to anybody else who gets them. For those of you who get hiccups all the time, I know this is such a silly thing to be mentioning on an insurance podcast, but I can never get rid of them. I have tried everything. We used to have this trick when I was growing up where you'd like hold your breath as long as you could. And then whenever you couldn't hold your breath any longer, you would drink as much water as you could. And then you would try and hold your breath for a few more seconds before you'd let it out. That doesn't even work for me anymore. But she was like, get a spoonful of peanut butter and just suck on it. And she was like, I promise you, your hiccups will go away. And I was like, you're insane.
that.
That's not going to work. That sucker works. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just like I don't know. It works.
Well,
It
my
works.
kids make fun of
So
me
that's
when
my
I
tip
get
of
the
the day.
hiccups.
Suck on
So
some peanut butter.
my kids make fun of me when I get hiccups.
We all have access to, and it's free, is the sun. So, like, if we start feeling a little under the weather, I like to just go outside, take off my shoes, touch the ground, sit in the sun, and let natural vitamin D take over the body. And that almost always helps as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So next we're going to dive into homeopathy a little bit deeper. So I've brought a special guest on for that. All right. So we're here with Amanda Pelser. So I've actually known you for 5 years now?
Something like that, 5 or 6. We first started full-timing in 2019, and we probably met at some point not too long after that.
Yeah, I think so, because we've known you for, it feels like forever. But
Mhm.
so one of the things that you did a couple years back was you hosted a homeopathy workshop for free
Mhm.
at a campground. And so
Yeah.
that was the first time I was really introduced to you as a homeopath,
Mhm.
which, I'd love for you to kind of just introduce how you got into that.
Yeah, so homeopathy for me goes back to about 2013-ish. I can't even remember exactly how I learned about it. I want to say it was like a free PDF of some sort that someone put out. And then just over the years, we learned more and more, and it eventually became our full-time primary go-to way of dealing with our health and wellness.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been doing it forever, I feel like, because I mean, I got into a lot of it back when I was in California years
Mhm.
ago. I just happened to be with a group of other homeschool moms that did a lot of it. And so we harvested things and we did things together. And so that's one of the things that drew me to you. But yours is a little bit different. But how would you go to explain what homeopathy is to somebody that maybe doesn't have any idea?
Yeah. Let me pause for just a moment just to give you a little bit of a disclaimer, just because I am a certified homeopath and I just want to make sure that everyone understands what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. So I'm just going to read this to you because it's the easiest way that I can do it without tripping over things.
That's
So I
fair.
just want you to know that I am not a licensed medical professional and the information that I am sharing with you is educational and it's not intended to be medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am a certified practical and clinical homeopath, and homeopathy supports the whole person and it stimulates the God given ability within the body to heal itself through the use of presenting symptoms. Please consult your medical provider if you're looking for medical advice. So
Yeah. And
that
I,
said,
I actually
I hate that I
actually
have to
love
do
that.
that.
I actually love that you do that though, because you do not say, that you can treat something
Mhm. I
necessarily.
am not a
So
licensed medical provider. I cannot treat, diagnose any of that. I work on with homeopathy and I work with symptoms.
gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
So going back to that, so how would you explain homeopathy to somebody that's maybe new to the idea?
Yeah. So first of all, we got to define the word because so many people use it incorrectly. I even came across a situation yesterday where someone was saying they were a homeopathic something or other. And I'm like, no, you're not. It is not natural health in general. It's not, or natural modalities in general. It's not herbs. It's not vitamins and supplements. It's also not new age or anything like that. If you're a believer and have concerns about those things, um, homeopathy, it's also not home remedies because that's a difficult one. Like you see the word homeopathy and it looks like it has the word home in it,
Yep.
not home remedies. You could make remedies at home if you absolutely had to, but generally you're going to get them from a homeopathic pharmacy. So the knots out of the way, what it is it is a subset of natural health and wellness modalities. So it's a part of natural alternative options, but it is based on the idea of similimum and what Hahnemann called like cures like. So we're using a substance that, in its gross form, it's plant form or mineral form or whatever the original substance is, it can create certain symptoms in that form. And now we're diluting it and we're potentizing it and we're using it to nudge the body back to homeostasis.
Okay.
A
Well,
lot of big
that's
words.
yeah, it is. And your approach to homeopathy is a little bit different than a lot of people. You have a
Mhm.
scriptural base to homeopathy. Can you tell me how that happened?
Yeah. My background is actually, I have a BA in Bible and an MA in Old Testament studies. So I'm a seminary trained biblical researcher. I worked in the church for years. I was a communications director in a church, ministry assistant, et cetera, along the way. And when I got sick, chronic issues that the doctors, they didn't know what to do with me. They were gaslighting me. Oh, there's nothing really wrong with you. Your tests are normal. Many people listening have probably dealt with this. I had to go and search on my own, and God led me to homeopathy. But along the way, I did encounter some things that was like, oh, well, it's New Age, it's witchcraft, it's occult, it's Eastern mysticism, or the term my husband absolutely loves to hear me say, woo woo. But it's not any of those things. It drives him crazy when I say that. None of those things. And I just went back to my roots. I went back to my training and language skills and things like that because I know Greek, I know Hebrew, not fluently, but I mean, I can get my way around and
Right.
using resources and things. And so I went back to all of that and I'm like, okay, God, is this really okay for me to use? And the answer was a resounding yes. And I started finding so many things throughout scripture that fit with this idea of simillimum and using something similar to learn something new, parables, even Jesus, we can look at as our ultimate simillimum because he became like us in order to cure us. That one always gets me.
That's
But
cool.
I just had to go through and use some of those things and ask the Holy Spirit to give me wisdom along the way. And I again came out with a resounding yes, this is okay to use. And I was seeing Christians in particular who were like, "Oh, I don't know if this is okay." And God then led me to starting to put out some resources and helping people from this perspective. Yes, you can use homeopathy without a lot of extra things layered on top of it, things like pendulums and dowsing and intuition. There's
Right.
other things, but we can homeopathy at its base foundation is definitely biblically aligned.
So, what are some health concerns that RVers face that maybe homeopathy can help with? And so, very
Yeah.
real life approach to that.
Yeah. You're out in nature constantly. Unless you're, the real bougie type and you're only in like the super nice resort type RV parks, you're probably boondocking or you're in the middle of the woods somewhere. There's fire ants, there's ticks, there's mosquitoes. So remedies like Ledum or Apis are great to have on hand. You're out in the middle of nowhere. What are you going to do if you got a stomach bug or food poisoning? You're going to want something like Nux or Arsenicum or two that come to mind for those kinds of situations. There's so many remedies available to you to have on hand where if you were in the middle of nowhere and couldn't get to an urgent care, a doctor, even an emergency situation, you break a bone or something like that, what are you going to do while trying to get to someplace for that type of emergency care to set a bone? You're going to want arnica, aconite, maybe bryonia to help with the pain for every time you move, the pain is worse. So those are a few things off the top of my head.
What should an average RV couple or family be carrying in their travel kit if they wanted to just get started with homeopathy?
Yeah, I could list 100 remedies easily. They'd be like, you need this one, and you need this one, and you need this one. But there are three that I would say every RV family needs to have in their purse, in their backpack, in their car, in their RV. Um, and I have a PDF that tells more about these. If you go to rootedhomeopathy.com/learn to RV. But it's arnica, aconite, and ledum. Arnica is mostly for your shocks, traumas, injuries, bruising, those types of symptoms. Aconite, definitely for shock where there's a lot of fear. You get in a car accident, you have a major fall, or you're just simply starting to come down with a cold or flu type of a set of symptoms. Arnica would be the first go to. And then lead them because those fire ants are out there and they're not nice. Ticks, mosquitoes, any of those kinds of puncture wounds, Leadum is good for.
That's great. Can you tell me a story where homeopathy made a difference? Because I know you do a lot of consulting, and I
Mm.
don't need you to name names, but just something that where it spoke to you, where this you knew this was what you were doing was the right way to go.
Oh, wow. So many stories. How do I pick one? Um, I mean, we dealt with some things just in the last, few weeks here with some sort of nasty variant of the flu thing that possibly came through here, and then I had hives, and I wanted to go run into town, and we don't full time anymore. We have property and we're kind of homesteading and animals and all that, but it's not like Walmart or CVS is right on the corner. It's a 30-minute drive or more, depending on what you're looking for. And I wanted to reach for something, some kind of an antihistamine for these hives. And I'm like, no, I know that's not right because it's just going to drive things in further and make me feel worse in the long run. And so just praying through that and, hey, God, give me patience and show me how to find the right remedy for what's going on with me right now. And in the midst of that, my husband stepped up and was able to, when he felt better, he was able to help me, help the boys. There were remedies all over my RV by the time we were done with all of that, that I still have to put away. Um, so there's situations like that, but I consulted with a family, an RV family, a little girl who had leg pain. And she had tried a number of different things, allopathically, conventional medicine, and she was very familiar with homeopathy. And we went with a remedy that's like, wow, this just doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense, but yet it makes sense. And within days, she was already seeing progress on the leg pain and then additional things. There were food sensitivities and other symptoms that she was already starting to see progress in a few days to a few weeks. Worked with her
That
for about 6 months.
that's interesting that you can see all of that just from a homeopathic type of, perspective, that it doesn't
Mhm,
have to be the other way. So you do consultations.
mhm.
How would someone get a hold of you in order to schedule a one-on-one consultation with you?
Rootedhomeopathy.com/call would be the best place to go. And the page that I mentioned earlier, I'm going to put a few other resources on there. So rootedhomeopathy.com/learn to RV. I'll make sure I link that there too.
And
But you
we'll
would just
we'll link the show notes to that as well so they can get that too.
So you would just schedule a call with me. That's a 15-20 minute discovery call is what I refer to it as. And we just talk about what I can and can't do for you and what homeopathy is and expectations of what homeopathy might be able to do in your situation, what it's like to then work with me. I generally do follow-ups every 8 weeks with chronic consult clients. And then answer any questions, see if we're a good fit to work together because I don't work with every person that calls me up. I want to make sure that we're on the same page with things and you're really ready to move forward using this modality because I don't want to waste your time or your money or mine for that matter. And so we just have a chat, make sure we're a good fit to work together. And then we go from there, paperwork and intake paperwork and scheduling our first consult.
Well, thanks, Amanda. I appreciate you taking the time with me today. I know your life is busy with homesteading and all of that. It's been fun watching you. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Well, that was super interesting. I always love talking to both sides of that equation. And so with Dealora and knowing a little bit more about homeopathy, that's always helpful. Obviously, there's lots of different ways to get healthcare on the road, and some are good and some are bad. I think that, there's no one, Dealora said it, there's no one size fits all approach to healthcare on the road. But, things like,
Mhm.
does your insurance pay for chiropractic care? You need to know all of those things. Tasha, since you work in kind of a healthcare situation, do you have any tips or maybe takeaways that
Yeah.
you would want to share with this community?
Yeah. My big takeaway is really know what you are signing up for. Know where your coverage expands to. Be aware of what your deductible is. Really make sure you know what you're paying in and what you're getting out. And that includes your copays, what doctors are covered. Um, it's not a one size fits all. Unfortunately, the insurance healthcare situation is pretty convoluted out there. Um, and even down to if you have, I don't want to name names because I don't want to get sued, but if you have a uh, colored shape insurance through an employer and your friend has the same colored shape insurance through their employer, you may have coverage for a procedure that they do not have coverage for. So you really need to make sure that you're looking at the policy and getting in and really paying attention. The other thing is if you travel, don't be afraid to call that phone number that's on your card to find out if the doctor that you're getting ready to go to is covered by your insurance and ask them to help you find someone who is, if that doctor is not. Find the urgent care that will be covered. Find the ER that's covered because sometimes the website will be out of date. Sometimes the office doesn't have the correct information. I've had instances where the urgent care didn't know that they were covered by my insurance, and the insurance had to communicate to them that they were covered before the urgent care would see me. So it's just you got to really advocate for yourself, and that's my biggest tip.
Well, see, and that's interesting because for me, with TRICARE, so there's TRICARE East and TRICARE West, and you have to sign up for one of them. And so we fall kind of right in the middle with Texas, but I think it puts us on the TRICARE West line, which, when we're on the East Coast like we are this year, it makes it a little bit harder. But every time we have an emergency, I am supposed to call in. And so stop and think about the irony of that. If there's an emergency, I have to now call and get permission, and then I have to get referrals for that permission. And so I can go to an ER with our supplemental system, and so that's one of the things that we use personally. But this past year, my son and his wife, we own a company. So he also works for us. So we started shopping around and looking at different plans. And so I learned a lot more about insurance this past year than I've ever needed to know. I want to dive in just for a second about travel insurance because there's options out there for travelers. You saw me mention it with Dealora a little bit, about you know, FRVA has a supplemental program for people that are on the road, especially full timers, where anywhere you are in the country, they'll get you, your rig, your family back home at no additional cost to you. That's worth it for me for that $99 a year. But I know there's companies like SkyMed and, um, Masa are the two big names that I'm thinking of that I see at shows all the time, and they have similar programs, but they'll tell you that their
Mhm.
program is better than FRVA. And Dealora mentioned that there's some programs that she sells that actually come with travel insurance built into them. Um, do you guys, either one of you, have any type of travel insurance for situations like that on the road?
We just got FRVA, so we've got that benefit, and then we also have SkyMed. I think it's SkyMed. I think that's the one we went with. Matt did all of the paperwork and did all of the things for it. He went to all of the sessions and, like, the learning for it, and I worked while he did that, but I believe that's what we have, yeah.
Yeah, and we do the FRVA thing as well, but that's the only thing we do.
Well, and I think FRVA has an incredible plan, and it's only $99 a year to join FRVA, and then you
Yeah.
get that benefit
Mhm.
out of it as many years as you renew your membership to FRVA. And so that
It's
travel
affordable.
assistance program, yeah, it's affordable, 100%. And I think budget absolutely enters in when you're talking about healthcare. I don't know that you'd think budget enters in if something terrible happened on the road, but at the point at which, you have to stay within your boundaries. You can't just you have to know what those
Yes.
are and your travel patterns. If you've got a kid with braces and you're willing to fly home or
Yeah,
drive back, you know, you do what you do,
right.
right?
Do it. I mean, one tip that I wanna kinda throw out there is if you can, you should try to have the cost of your deductible in a savings account, you know?
Yes.
Mhm.
And if you got a really high deductible, I know sometimes that's not always possible, but if you've got, like, a $5 or $6,000 deductible and, like, for us, 6 people, even consider at least 2 people's worth of deductibles in the account or something, so that way, if something happens, you're not because I've been in this situation before. I have been in a situation where I needed to take someone in, and the first thought that goes through my head is, "How the heck are we going to afford this?" Like, you don't wanna be in a situation like that. So if you can have a chunk of your money sitting in savings account for those emergency situations, then you're not gonna stress about that when it happens, and you can just focus on what you need to do, and that's getting your family member help, and, it takes off a lot of that stress and pressure.
The other thing that I just thought of on insurance is there are some plans out there that will give you discounts if you meet certain criteria. So, if you're a non smoker, if you do the fitness exams, if you keep up on your wellness exams, if you're over 45 and you get your yearly colonoscopy, because P.S., what I've learned this year as a person who now needs to have them and also writes about them is that um, colon cancer is now coming at an earlier age than it ever has before. And so they have actually moved that age for recommended colon screenings up from 50 to 45. So there are certain insurances that if you will do those screenings, like your breast cancer screenings and, things like that, they will give you discounts if you stay up on those things because it's in the end, it's cheaper for them if they can catch those types of things earlier than it is if it gets to a point where it costs them more money to treat them. So look for those things in the policies as you're shopping because that can save you money in the end as well.
Yep. And so,
Absolutely.
and if you're on a lower income scale and you're staying in one place most of the time, maybe some of this doesn't apply to you because you're using Medicaid. If you're over 65, maybe this doesn't apply to you because you're going home part of the season. Maybe you don't need any of
Mhm.
that. So, but knowing how to manage prescription medication. So this past year, Frank has
Mhm.
had some prescription meds that he's needed to take. Um, Mostly for high blood pressure, and so, it's not always easy getting that medication, but we have a domicile where we can ship it to them directly, and then it's, forwarded to us. That's because it's not a controlled substance, but, know your
Mhm.
prescription plan, know if the campground will allow you to get mail. Um, those are just some basic stuff, and Tasha, you mentioned that you've got some prescriptions that are running out. Um, and you have to, make
Yeah.
that work. How do you get those on the road though most of the time?
So what I do is my prescriptions get filled through Walgreens. And one of the benefits of my prescription plan, because my prescriptions are a covered benefit through my insurance,
Oh, that's
if
good.
I fill 3 months at a time, the price is actually cheaper if I fill 3 months at a time than it is if I fill monthly. Um, so that can actually benefit me, but it can also harm me. Like if I'm in Indiana and the pharmacy that I'm trying to refill my 3 month prescription at closes because they're understaffed. And then we have to leave the area. And then whenever we get to the next park, my prescription has just run out and they will not transfer my prescription from Indiana because it's run out. And this is not something that just happened to me, but it is something that just happened to me, and so I'm sweating it real hard.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We fill it at Walgreens. I have to change my address in the Walgreens system when we move. I say this is the address that I need to fill that at, and they will fill it at the next Walgreens that we're at. And that is another thing, is that a lot of insurances now, they will give discounts if you do 3 months instead of 1 month at a time, for medicines that are not more controlled and can be filled at that big of a amount. The other thing I was going to say, though, is that if you walk into a pharmacy, there's like the Good RX cards and the different little prescription discount cards. There have been times where those cards have given me a different price than my insurance has given me on my prescriptions. And
Interesting.
Walgreens has always been really good about checking that to make sure that that will not give me a lower price than what my insurance through my employer will give me. Um, but that's something to check on. Like if you don't have an insurance for a prescription, you might check those, because they've saved me a chunk of change before. They've worked really
Yeah.
well.
And that's a great tip for snowbirds that go south for the season. If you're only going to be gone 3 or 4 months, just get the 3 or 4 months of, prescriptions before you leave, and then check in with your doctor when you get home. And so that's a great tip, actually. All right. So open enrollment is happening very soon. So Dealora talked about that. So if you have questions about open enrollment, we are not your girls for that, I don't think, but Dealora is. So she will be happy to answer those questions for you. So just drop those questions in the comments to this episode, or reach out directly to her. Jenn will drop her link in the show notes. Shout out for helpful tools on the road. So there'll be a whole list of tools that we've mentioned here, and then maybe some that we haven't that we'll have in those show notes as well. And then don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, do all the things. Join us on Patreon. Every episode, every week drops a whole week early. And today, and I know when you see this, you won't see it today, but today we're 1 month into our podcast. We released the podcast 1 month ago today. And so we're very excited to have all of you on our journey.
Yay.
So, and we couldn't do it without you. Honestly, I don't know, looking back to, a month ago, I think that it's just been such a journey already, and I can't wait to see where it takes us. So thanks for joining us this week on, medical stuff. It's an important topic, but it's, not something everybody talks about. So we'll embrace the hard stuff. If you want to hear something on the podcast, all you have to do is drop that in the comments below and let us know what you want to hear about next. We'd love to do that. Anyway, thanks guys for joining us this week. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this episode. See you down the road. Make sure you subscribe, like, and leave us a review.